On the way.
Okay. All righty then. Hey there. Hi there. Oh there. Yeah, we're going to talk about platforms, not shoes, but computer platforms. Okie doke. We had started an article on internet platforms, but before we get to that, and I just wanted to sort of offer up certain ideas that I think will become important or relevant at some bright and shining moment. And that is that we are talking about information. Welcome to Dis and Dat. This is five-ish on 26 June. And I do this nearly every day. I do it on weekdays and on Saturdays at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock on Sundays is Weekly Marks. Actually, the spirituality is the only other thing scheduled for today. We may, whatever is going to happen after this, I think we'll be talking about hedgehogs, I think, after we'll hold out till then. That may become interesting. And but this particular issue of finishing this article on information and how platforms operate is more interesting because it overlaps with the problem raised by folks who are interested in modern money theory or neo-chartalism, as some people will refer to it. Why is that important? Well, I think that there's this central issue, which we'll come back to in probably in 2 weeks if we suddenly decide to do this one little class unity course on Sundays, is try to figure out the role of money. Ultimately, it is about money. And what I'm going to sort of fiddle around with today is that the thing about modern money theory is that it adopts the same kinds of issues that we have been looking at. That is, how do you account for, or can you account for surplus value? The reality, of course, is that modern money theory doesn't have a theory of surplus value because that means that they would be sort of adopting a Marxian position, which they don't necessarily do. But it is possible to hold a Marxian position, I think, on surplus value without really violating modern money theory. But that may be too far down the road. The issue is, of course, the thing that we raised a couple weeks ago, that is of what are common resources or what are collective goods, what are commodities. Modern money theory doesn't quite go there. So there's going to be kind of this funny little integration or lack thereof that may be necessary. It's fairly clear that modern money theory is more focused on the issue of money. But the thing is that information and money, or the money commodity, or the information commodity, all kind of interrelate once you start looking at financial products. So that's kind of where we're going to wind up at some moment. One example of that, of course, is certain things about property rights or property and the application of said things. But we'll get there eventually. So there's some ideas that come up at the same time that modern money theory creates for us that kind of using a Marxian lens is not problematic. It is problematic for some folks, but it's not problematic, I think, in the bigger picture. Money is created endogenously by the banking sector rather than exogenously by central bank lending. So essentially, there's a slight adjustment for what we think of as money in the modern money theory. it is a focus on banking and not central banking, which is sort of a very small but very interesting problem, raised in a interesting way, important way. And also the role of the circuit or circulation. And what is it that we're doing here? Are we continuing a process of production within the process of circulation and for the process of circulation? And those things are there. This is where we have been for a while, and that is volume 2 of Marx's Capital, where the circuits of capital are important, and money's relationship to the circuits of capital seems fairly obvious. Modern money theory is, in fact, a discussion of one particular circuit, that is a one that it engages money more directly. But you can see that the same idea is there, and you don't necessarily violate one's concern for the basic focus of modern money theory without necessarily violating talking about Marx. Within current debates around the production of value under capitalism, it's useful to make an explicit conceptual distinction between where surplus value is produced and where it is extracted. And so modern money theory has no position on the one hand about surplus value or extraction, but I think it's not horrible to sort of make the next step about why money operates the way it does. So that's for probably a later discussion. But I've put at the front end of today's little piece of reading is a question raised by modern money theory, or a modern money theorist, in that came across an article, and it is it's from it sits within a group discussing economic democracy, and offers up the idea that money is a technology, and so it is it may be hard to sort of wrap one's head around the idea that it is a technology, that it has kind of instrumental role. But it's an interesting little article, and I offer it up only because it's very brand new and discusses an interesting idea that is not too dissimilar from where we are right now. And it also raised this question of congealment again. Technology is congealed practical knowledge embedded in material culture. And you have to sort of, do you really subscribe to that or not? And this congealed issue is another version, perhaps, of the attempt of the issue of congealment, which, as I've said before, I don't like to subscribe to because it's somewhat essentialist in invocating it. Maybe it's not so much about congealing things, so much it is having some kind of I could get crazier about this, but it is a kind of interrelationship. Let's put it that way. Congealment always suggests a certain, that things always come together, gets reified, and I always find that a kind of a difficult presentation. That is that it's the labor theory of value problem. It are certain things congealed labor, and you automatically, once you start invoking it, you get into these strange issues about what exactly gets congealed or whatever, and so it I kind of it's a trigger warning, I suppose, of some kind. Well, anyway, following on this particular article, practical knowledge is knowledge applied functionally to achieve desired outcomes. That is, technology engenders the exercise of power. Benkler adopts the element embedded to indicate that technology is distant from institutions. Explicit or implicit instructions serving as constraints and affordances on certain behaviors for people differently situated in social hierarchies. Law, for example, produces such institutions and imbues them with legitimate violence. Although technology is undoubtedly social, artifacts have politics. People and institutions struggle over material culture. Indeed, the pluralism we see today in money results from money's contingent development in certain places at certain times according to how power operated. Syed adds the element congealed to indicate the friction and time associated with embedding technology. Money itself fits this definition. As neo-chartalists and fellow travelers in the legal academy stress, money is a legal institution. It establishes the rules of the game. As Trump would say, it's a scorecard. As the canonical line goes, money is a medium, a measure, a standard, and a store of value. Neo-chartalists build on this definition, most notably adding tax receivability. While money is a legal creature, it also helps create the law itself. Money has a constitutional basis, but our Constitution also presupposes a public treasury and a particular form of monetary design. Some agencies administer money, while others monitor money to regulate other sectors of the economy, shape social relations in private or community spaces, or detect wrongdoing. In private law, money is a key, if often silent, legal concept dividing law from equity and serving an integral structural function in property, contract, and tort law. However, money is more than an institution. Money helps create the material conditions under which practical knowledge is constituted and executed. To govern, states and other powerful actors embed certain forms of money in legal institutions. However, they also embed money in physical infrastructure and have a material culture. Money congeals into our social and natural lives. We can often touch, smell, or hear it. These features differ across time and space. We have a physical relationship with money, grounded in the objects surrounding us, even if the relationship is increasingly computerized. Like other technologies, money's embeddedness within more intricate social systems determines its power. However, as neo-chartalists stress in different contexts, systems design matters. The shape of money as technology tends to map deeper social hierarchies, but it also helps create them in the first place. Money eases and tightens constraints on what differently situated people can do practically. It helps make the material conditions of social organization and relations. Money grants affordance capabilities to some people while harming others. Certain aspects of money, its hardware, software, and user interface, may appear innocuous from a bird's eye view, but are crucial in our discussions of the future of public money. And this issue of public money, of course, is very important to modern money theory. Anyway, so what I came across is this article on sitting in a variety of other things. Note, of course, Open Society University Network Economic Democracy Initiative, which is a moderately big deal. EDI, I think, will become a bigger deal as one moves forward. And this fellow at Columbia Law School did this working paper on this, which I just read from. It has some issues, and I think it's worth talking about. This is why it's working paper. And understanding chartalism or neo-chartalism, it is a heterodox theory of money that argues that money originated historically with states' attempts to direct economic activity rather than as a spontaneous solution to the problems with barter or as a means with which to tokenize debt, and that fiat currency has value in exchange because of sovereign power to levy taxes on economic activity payable in the currency they issue. So that's the kind of core notion that people like Warren Mosler, Randy Ray, Steph Kelton, and Bill Mitchell are responsible for in terms of modern money theory. And it's something that we will probably come back to. But what's important to us, and I think in terms of discussing platform capitalism, is there may be a relation of chartalism to that. That is, monetary circuit theory has a kind of position in talking about the circuitry, in talking about this thing that is really important to creating an information economy. And because of its relation to money and the way in which money is created, or the way in which money is used, perhaps, that we have to sort of see what those relations are. And are those relations, and without getting too complicated, what is the relation, how direct or indirect is that circuit relationship? Is it one that is embodied in the sign itself? That is it iconographic in that sense, or iconologic? That is, there is a contiguity, that is a proximity or connection with the thing itself, like an icon does, is that is, the visual thing is sort of the thing itself. A religious icon, for example, is not simply a symbol of something, but rather it functions in as I often say, a more direct or embedded or congealed relationship. Or is it a problem, as we've seen in the context of the value form, more symbolic? That is, it's a little bit more abstracted in that sense. And we have been looking at abstractions at all times anyway, whether it's the abstraction of labor or the abstraction of money. They exist at associated levels. And of course, the association, not necessarily integrated into money theory, but the question of labor, of course, that Marx is engaged in. I would like to suggest, and this is a thing that I haven't thought too much about, but I think it's actually worth thinking, assuming that you have three major sign functions, that is iconicity, indexicality, and symbolism. And it may be more indexical. And that is, in fact, I think, what's going on when Marx talks about the circuits of capital, that these circuits are, as I've said, nested, but they interrelate, as we've been looking at various moments over the last week or so. And so this intersection or union of various circuits or cycles or sets of action, their interrelationship is one that has the system of intersections which are made more powerful by the scale at which they operate. So therefore, surplus value only occurs when you have this system of exchange. That is, this idea of something becoming something else. The kind of immanence that goes on in capital. So that's kind of where we want to have that discussion. And what I'll do is try and figure out what that connection is in my own little approach. So going back to chartalism, in the complementary view, chartalism explains the vertical, that is, the government to private and vice versa, the private to government interactions, while circuit theory is a model of the horizontal, that is, private to private interactions. So needless to say, chartalism can explain a fair number of things that are both public and private, and also describe a certain type of circuitry, as it were. And so Hyman Minsky seemed to incorporate a chartalist approach to money creation in his book, Stabilizing an Unstable Economy, while Basil Moore, in his book, Horizontalists and Verticalists, delineates the differences between bank money and state money, which is essentially the issue for modern money theorists. Modern money theorists are concerned about fiscal policy. This is what makes it neo-Keynesian. That is, what is the role between government and the organization of the banking system or the money system? And so Jamie Galbraith supports chartalism and wrote for Bill Mosler's book. The key distinction from mainstream economic theories of money creation is that circuitism, that is chartalism, holds that money is created endogenously, as I pointed out before, endogenously, that is, within the banking sector rather than outside the banking sector by the government with the central bank through central bank lending. That is, the economy creates money itself, rather than money being provided by some outside agent. It's actually a fairly important thing because it would change the nature of how, if you could institute it theoretically in the American economy, it would change the nature of how the Fed operates, and also dissolve certain kinds of questions that one would ask about the means or roles of central banking. These theoretical differences lead to a number of different consequences and policy prescriptions. Circuitism rejects, among other things, the money multiplier based on reserve requirements, arguing that money is created by banks lending, which only then pulls in reserves from the central bank rather than re-lending money pushed in by the central bank. The money multiplier arises instead from capital adequacy ratios. For example, the ratio of its capital to its risk-weighted assets. And essentially what you're kind of, without oversimplifying, even though I am, it is a kind of rethinking what goes on in terms of a centralized currency. As with other monetary theories, circuitism, that is neo-chartalism, distinguishes between hard money, that is money which is exchangeable at a given rate for some commodity, such as gold, that hard money, and credit money. And this is what we were talking about before, what I was talking several days ago about the issue of that Marx in the, doesn't get to it until, the third volume is talking about other kinds of capital, other than industrial capital. That is talking more about merchant capital, investment capital, or financial capital, etc., rather than derived from central bank money. Credit money drives the monetary system. While it does not claim that all money is credit money, historically, money has often been a commodity or exchangeable for such. Basic models begin by only considering credit money, adding other types of money later. So we're just looking at a change of definition, a shifting of frames or around what the money, what money is. In circuitism, a monetary transaction, buying a loaf of bread in exchange for dollars, for instance, is not a bilateral transaction that is between buyer and seller, as in a barter economy, but is rather a tripartite transaction between buyer, seller, and bank. Rather than a buyer handing over a physical good in exchange for their purchase, instead there's a debit to their account at a bank and a corresponding credit to the seller's account. And that's really kind of what goes in when you take your credit card in to the supermarket and buy your loaf of bread. This is precisely what happens in credit card or debit card transactions. And in the circuitous account, this is how all credit money transactions occur. So anyway, it raises a physicality or the congealing before. So we went through this sort of system of determinations, and where we left off yesterday was to talk about the role of gold, and money as gold turning over. So assuming that we've been kind of reading along with this, we're going to come to issues of capital circulation, which is kind of why I introduced this modern money theory thing. So as in yesterday, so I'll start reading here and hopefully you won't get lost. For capital and its evolution and worldwide expansion, this is the Marcos Dantas article. The annihilation of space by time becomes an extraordinary necessity, Marx states in the Grundrisse, in order to reduce the time required for the transposition of space. The capital is invested in developing means of transportation and communication. But there are certain independent branches of industry in which the product of the productive process is not a new material product, is not a commodity. And this is the role, as we were talking yesterday, about the communications industry, whether engaged in transportation proper of goods and passengers, or in the mere transmission of communications, so transportation of more abstract things, letters, telegrams, economically important. However, what the transportation industry sells is change of location. The useful effect is inseparably connected with the process of transportation, i.e., productive process of the transportation industry, that is, it is that the useful effect can be consumed only during this process of production. It does not exist as a utility different from this process. You have to actually be moved, or the thing has to be moving. A use thing, which does not function as an article of commerce, does not circulate as a commodity until after it's been produced. But the exchange value of this useful effect is determined, like that of any other commodity, by the value of the elements of production, that is, labor, power, and means of production, consumed in it, plus the surplus value created by the surplus labor of the laborers employed in transportation. Now, I think this is not addressed, in modern money theory. So, it's just another thing that they haven't attended to quite yet. Although I think it would be interesting to see the literature on this, because it does change the nature of our thinking about things like transportation. And, for example, why should there be, units of money at all? Why can't it be simply another resource? You shouldn't have to pay. It's like it's like a free ride. It's like free transportation. There's ticketless transportation. Therefore, Marx would say the formula of circulation and accumulation in the transportation industry looks like this. Recall, this is Formula 4. We looked at Formula 1, 2, and 3. It's the same as our regular Marxian construction, that is MC, et cetera, M prime, C prime, blah, 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 where MP, in terms of forming the commodity, includes products for transportation, energy, machinery, facilities, other inputs, and of course, labor power. People are still involved in one way or another. Now, the issue that comes from this notion, by trying to kind of, as it were, congeal or integrate this set of ideas, I don't want to overuse that idea, that is not unlike the use of algorithms and the kind of the necessity of people being incorporated into the communication process or the information process, hence making you essentially part of the capital. That is, it's important to participate in Amazon in order to, it's the question of volume. You need to have a big enough participation in the algorithm, that is, or being in the algorithm helps form or creates the vitality of the network. And that's why, we're all annoyed by the way the algorithm operates when we use YouTube. That is, just use a very simple and crude example. That is, if I look at too many YouTube videos on chess, it's going to organize the kinds of things that come up in my little suggested column that appears after I watch something, that the algorithm is going to, try to push, as it were, other kinds of selections onto me. It's no different than when Google tries to insert ads at the top of your search. Oh, you're looking for this. And so therefore, we're going to shove whatever these things are in the top end of the selections of your search. I hope you've noticed that happening on pretty much every search engine. Well, not on every search engine. There are search engines that try to strip that out, and which is a good idea, but they have issues. And I would assert to you that Google and et al. Spend a little time trying to defeat search engines that do that. Anyway, Marx himself comments that this Formula 4, has almost the same form as that of the production of precious metals. And that's actually kind of interesting or important. We were talking about that yesterday, about how gold, is sort of compressed in the same thing. The equivalence of gold to the economic process is very direct or simultaneous. Similar to mining, work carried out in the production of transport and communication, P, is realized directly into surplus money. That is DM, that is delta M, or the change in money. Here also, there is no production of new intermediary commodities. This is as it were, a moneyless idea, that is, the gold is very direct. But unlike mining and transportation, commodities from third parties function as raw materials in some other industry. The transportation or communication entrepreneur must withdraw a commodity from circulation in addition to equipment, energy, labor power, etc., transport the commodity elsewhere, actually do the thing, and then return it to circulation. So there's this set of processes going on, similar to mining, but, surplus value is therefore extracted from the labor of railroad workers, sailors, truck drivers, telecommunication techs, etc. The transportation company withdraws products from circulation to keep these products in circulation. This apparent contradiction is explained by the fact that transport and communication industries comprise, quote unquote, a separate sphere of investment of productive capital. Different because it appears as a continuation of a process of production within the process of circulation and for the process of circulation. This is not that different from money in that sense, and that therein lies the issue. It would be as if the factory had the dimensions of its own market. Now, if this is not possible, the opposite would be close to reality in the huge facilities of Ford Motor Company in River Rouge. Detroit in the 1940s, there were 160 kilometers of railways and hundreds of kilometers of conveyor belts, drawbridges, and other means of transporting people and materials. As well as the factory, the company itself was highly vertical, that is, trying to implement on its premises as much as possible the entire circuit. And this is the verticality is actually very important, and this applies in other industries. That is, it's why Google makes its own phones available. I mean, you can buy a phone elsewhere, but there are Google phones as well, in that sense. Not unlike Chromebooks, etc. Ford's goal was to reduce its production processes to circulation processes, reducing production processes to circulation processes, to keep capital in permanent movement as quickly as possible. And that therein lies where we're going to talk about information economies. I showed an example of a Ford factory to show how linear they were, that is, to try and get everything into the production line. Capital constantly seeks to reduce to a minimum the time taken for material transformation per product unit of transportation and sale of the commodity and of realization of the invested capital. Just capital wants to do that. Therefore, it's not only a matter of canceling spaces by time, the annihilation of space by time, but as shown above, also, and perhaps most importantly, remember we've talked about turnover, reducing turnover times to a minimum or realizing the highest number of possible turnovers in a year, considering that turnover time includes the time taken for production and realization. In this effort, capital developed not only efficient means of transporting commodities, but also even more efficient means of transporting information. That's what we want, information. You won't get it. Most of all, in the 20th century, capital expanded a powerful industry that became broadly known as communications, including both its infrastructure and the production of content that adds work and surplus value to this infrastructure. That is cinema, music, radio and television programs, etc. In the 21st century, the internet arrived to join this industry. Not only to join it in its evolution, it tends to absorb all the others. All these industries, that is cinema, music, press, media, broadcasting, radio, and television, without exception, generate a product that is not necessarily annihilated in its consumption. That is information. It is true that data storage, film, vinyl, or digital disc, paper, TV sets, etc., can be destroyed sooner or later by thermodynamic determinations. In other words, you can burn this shit up. But the content remains in the minds and actions of individuals and societies in a knowledge industry. It can be reproduced for eternity. Today, we can still read Aristotle or Virgil, whether it's on parchment, paper, or digital reader, or in Fahrenheit 451 by consulting the person who becomes the book. Less than an act of consumption, the act of reading or listening is an act of reproduction. It is, as Dantas says, it's semiotic work that social subjects perform among themselves in intersubjective interactions, not necessarily synchronous, mediated by appropriate supports. Through most of human history, the only support could be the human body itself. that is, you carried the story with you, you repeated it. Christianity rose because people would, it's relatively simple. People can remember, commandments and shit like that. And then, walk a certain distance and relay this to others in small groups. Or papyrus and papers carried long distances by knights or sailors. From the invention of the telegraph in the 19th century, meeting the determination of capital turnover, data storage became electronic, which allows transporting information almost at the speed of light, which is pretty amazing when you think about the role of telegraphy in the 19th century. Notice that in the direct processes of work and production of information and communication, there is no transformation of raw materials into new use values. That is cotton into fabric, for example, for the textile industry, but productive consumption of equipment and inputs required for informational processes, that is machines, computers, papers, etc. A sheet of paper, for example, receives painted forms that show letters while still remaining a sheet of paper. It does not lose its shape or most of its original properties when it gains new communicational use value, providing the quote-unquote useful effect of transporting information. It is similar to the truck that serves the transportation circuit. Even if it naturally wears out with time and work, it doesn't stop being a truck as long as it can provide the useful effect of transportation. That is P-DM, delta M. The general formula of the communication circuit, based on formulas 1, 2, 3, and 4, become formula 5. And this is what formula 5 looks like. It has, it starts with M1 and then goes to C1, which has living work plus means of work above, energy, other facilities. There is a reflux, that is a converting of the material, because it operates simply as a circular kind of thing. Remuneration for information is at the end, that is delta M1. And you can see the different information. You have an information flow, which is more important here, which was described. I've just described that. It goes back and forth. It's a circuit in that sense. It's circular. There is a money flow. You can see M2 there, M2, C2, P2, delta C2, delta M2. Don't worry about all the letters. It's not math in that sense. It's just an algebra. That is, and then the change in money in the second context here is also goes back into the commodity form. So this idea of a money commodity is sort of automatically built into this and includes commodity flow, money flow itself, which is a representation, a mere representation in that sense. What's probably more important, and the one that we get all of our excitement from using our cell phones for whatever, is information flow. So in the circuit M1, there are companies or business departments specializing in employing work in the fields of technology development, marketing, promoting shows, etc. That is information work. I1, the I1 is here, where information flow is. The products of this work are semiotic materials, that is text, images, mathematical formulas, drawings, and so on. These results are communicated by suitable media, that is phone lines, paper reports, computer networks, etc., to companies or business departments that specialize in transforming the physico-chemical material needed to objectify those ideas or images in machines, vehicles, clothes, food, medicines, computers, buildings, etc. The M2 circuit, commodities, whether for productive or unproductive consumption. That is the M2 network is this here. The M2 circuit, that is. That relationship is interactive. Remember, note the arrows. Since these firms, transformation departments or industrial assembly lines, also inform them of their actual or potential offers. Hence the two-way information flow, that is I1, C2. See, here's C2 to I1 here. That's what's going on here. So if we have an assembly line and we're a process of making something, there is an information flow that goes on with this. We can try to make that even more efficient. like with robots and shit like that. But at some moment, it probably is going to be problematic, at least at this moment in technology. Information is a resource of increasing return that cannot be divided in equivalent units. In the language of the economic mainstream, information is a non-rival good. That is, it's not, it doesn't compete with it in that sense. It is a common resource. Because of this, in the capitalist regime, the appropriation of the value of information is only possible by imposing monopolistic intellectual property rights, IPRs, to society in the forms of patents, copyrights, and so on. The possession of these property rights allows capital to obtain informational rents, to grant interested or needy parties access to forms of information they have protected. That is science, technology, artistic products, events, and so on. So you need to have, some sort of access, whether it's that you've paid for the thing and that your subscription allows you access, or other things are used to subvert that, Netflix passwords or whatever. That is why the firms that are directly dedicated to industrial production, that is M2, remunerate the information capitalists by paying them pulpy rents, like that, pulpy rents, for the right of access to its proprietary information, M2 to I1. The final consumers also pay these informational rents embedded in the monopoly prices of the consumer goods they purchase. In one way or another, the old Marxian cycle of goods described in Formula 5 by M2 can only keep on working under the conditions of the information capital if it agrees to pay this mandatory toll to the monopolist holders of the intellectual property rights. It's no different than, the person who demands a shitload of dimes to get through the toll booth. It is not itself embedded and subsumed within any corporate holder of these rights. Considering this theoretical reference, from here on we advance to our object. That is, finally, social digital platforms, the thing of the platform economy. Everything said before will be used to highlight the accumulation logic of these platforms and their close links to the financial capital that funds them and draws extraordinary profits from them. In 2017, the internet platform market generated about $223 billion in advertising alone, excluding revenue from subscription sales, etc. 1/3 of this total was grabbed by Alphabet, that is the holding company that controls Google. In stock exchanges, the market value of the 20 largest companies controlling these data-driven platforms reach $3.8 trillion in 2017. Now, these companies keep a tight link on financial capital, some being directly controlled by investors and speculators in equities and derivatives markets. This is why it can be an incredible problem. As marketplaces, these socio-digital platforms can be classified into three types. There are market producers, those that directly aim at connecting sellers of goods or services to potential buyers. This is Department 2, reducing turnover times and costs. Examples are like Amazon, eBay, Alibaba, Uber, Airbnb. There are number 2, the second type of socio-digital platform as a marketplace is audience producers, those aimed at connecting advertisers to a public of potential buyers. That is YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, etc., Twitter, etc. Number 3, the third type, is demand coordinators. That is those aimed at facilitating business deals, especially money transfer between sellers and buyers. For example, PayPal. They can also be 2 other kinds of things, that is transactional, aimed at generating business immediately, or non-transactional. Initially, most users are not interested in buying or selling goods and services. And the remarkable example is, of course, social networks, where you're exchanging social capital, but it's kind of not obviously fungible. Stroneck suggests a more refined taxonomy, that is advertising, cloud, industrial product, and lean platforms. He shows that the whole capitalist system, including manufacturing industries and almost all other services, is moving to different platform business models, we can realize that all these platforms, except the better known advertising platforms, are different forms of market producers as defined by Martins. And all of them, including advertising platforms, have some basic characteristics that make them, quote unquote, a key business model for extracting and controlling data, sellers and buyers with an intermediary. It is a kind of unidirectional market in that context. STPs are changing perhaps forever the prevailing way of doing business since the early days of modern capitalism. The producer-consumer relationship used to happen through a one-way flow of commodities, usually mediated by a salesperson, no different than the Catholic Church, let's say. The commodity had to be moved from the factory to the store and wait there for the interest of a possible buyer. As we have seen, this movement led Marx to elaborate a set of exercises about capital turnover times. STPs provide the individual or any company with nearly immediate informational contact with a vast universe of buyers and sellers, being able to reduce transaction times to the limit of zero, that is, it can approach zero. They still offer the extra advantage of apparent information symmetry among the agents involved. This multilateral market brings together two large groups of users, those who sell but can also buy, and those who buy but can also sell. Both of them generate revenues directly or indirectly for the owner of the platforms, kind of how eBay works. Multilateral, figure 5 shows multilateral networking platforms that's defined by Martin. So before you saw a kind of unidirectional thing. Now we look at an interactive thing that has these affiliates on a platform, the social network. Since the SDP aims to enable individuals or groups of users to contact other individuals or groups of users, users are the primary resource of its business model. Gathering as many users as possible is what motivates investors to put money into building and maintaining these marketplaces, not unlike, as I was mentioning, about how surplus value is built. On the selling side, the presence of many sellers, although they're competitors, helps us to attract even more buyers. On the buying side, the presence of many buyers not only attracts more sellers, but also increases the information exchange about the price and quality of goods and services. You know, that's the kind of how the information market works, why Google is telling you all these things. During your search, that is. If both selling and buying sides feel stimulated to strengthen the same marketplace, the result will be that dominant positions in the specific SDP market will be taken by those that, for some reason, at a given moment, manage to display themselves as the most attractive. They benefit from network effects. The value of the network increases with the number of users. That's why surplus value is actually kind of important in this context. And if the value increases, more users will be motivated to join. Therefore, as we see nowadays, the worldwide platform market tends to be increasingly concentrated on and monopolized by a very small group of huge corporations. That is GAFA, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, and a few others. In the last decade, mobile platforms that have also expanded worldwide thanks to the development of smart terminal devices, that is smartphones and high-speed wireless networks, 3G, 4G, 5G. Mobile telecommunications now account for a large share of the time people surf the internet. Between 2008 and 2015, the percentage of connected time spent on mobile devices worldwide rose from 12.7% to 54.6%. By mid-2015, 78% of Facebook's advertising revenue came from mobile phones. And although they sometimes charge directly for their services, the main revenue source for SDPs is the monetization of their primary resource. That is, the users, regardless of which side of the transaction they're on. Since browsing leaves traces that are captured in real time by the algorithms developed in the SDP owners' laboratories, these platforms hold an enormous volume of data that, when put together and articulated, provide them with complete information on the whole market in which they operate. Based on this knowledge, they benefit from their privileged position to define the rules for accessing and using their marketplaces. In other words, if the multilateral relations among users seems to hold Paretian symmetry, that is, you can hold certain things constant, The relationship between SDP owners and their users is in fact asymmetric. That is, only the owners really know the whole market. Jeff Bezos, owns the whole market in that sense, and its further movements. From their position, from Amazon's position, they can even shape the movements, which they do, if you're a Prime member as opposed to whatever. However, users on any side cannot claim access to complete, total information about the users and actions of millions of agents around the world. Limits of space-time and of the tools available for them can narrow their decisions down to just a few sections of the whole marketplace. The market expansion coordinated and driven by SDP owners has already changed the practical, subjective relationship that users have with the internet and its apparently endless potentialities. The open and free search that finds what it needs on any website is being replaced by the offer that reaches the user more or less like a package, suggested as interesting for them because many others have already said it's interesting. The best records, the best movies, the best books, the best restaurants, the most important news, the best or most important as defined by the market, quote unquote. The user seems to be the source of the market, but it is impossible to ignore the role of the algorithms that process the total information in the configuration of that market. So, you're sort of really engaged with that. That's how it includes, for example, here, users and intentions and situations into the algorithm itself, owned by the Digital Financial Corporation, who hires paid scientific technical workers, has means of production, equipment, facilities, Amazon Web Services, etc., and then, of course, money in terms of platform remuneration. All of these things are about financial capital at the one hand, on that as the major sector in which equity ownership, etc. And the more important thing is us as consumers, users who buy, we expend our own labor power, our potential labor in that sense, in terms of information flow. Now, in this particular context, money is sort of elusive, but it is part of platform remuneration, and it's kind of invisible in that sense. So figure 6, the socio-digital platform business scheme. Based on information they obtained from the websites of the main platforms, testimonials from agents of this market, and from literature, the business model of these platforms can be described by the diagram in figure 6. That is a corporation, algorithms, sellers and buyers, seller users, buyer users, and all of those things assimilated into the algorithm. The algorithm has to identify and converge a buyer's intention with that of the sellers competing amongst themselves in the marketplace. Now, often this is done by a variety of things. That is, for example, in Amazon, you begin to make specifications. That is the price you want to pay, the more specific things about features of the thing you want to buy, etc. The seller remunerates the platform if its ad is viewed for a while on some of the thousands of screens, if its ad is clicked by someone opening its website on the screen of the person who clicked it, by the period of time the authors of the click browses its website, by effectively closing a business deal, among other factors. The algorithm controls all of this. No transaction should be made out of the platform. Profile data or user intentions are not provided, much less sold to customers, except for some secondary business deals. In general, customers can receive statistical data on their site success rates, that is, number of clicks, visits, closed deals, etc. But initially, they will not receive profile data about groups, much less about individuals in their own marketplace. Of course, sellers constitute many other circulation circuits, depending on their economic sector, that is, manufacturing, or retail, or finance, or agriculture, myriads of services, and so on. For this user category, the useful effect, in Marx's words, of the socio-digital platform, the SDP, is that it allows them to drastically reduce their turnover times while proportionally reducing the faux frais, that is, the sort of the false sense of the anxiety of waiting for something. The latter is possible due to the direct and almost individual interaction with potential buyers provided by the marketplace. Particularly in some cases, the money circuit time is detached from the various product circuit times. The money circuit can be realized in seconds. SDPs have definitely replaced metal or paper currency with electronic currency in a digital form that can be transported almost at the speed of light by telecommunication systems. How often have we used cash these days? You have it sitting around, it's in your wallet, etc. But, you hardly ever use it these days. In the one-way business model, that is figure 4, go further up, SDPs would have to wait for the buyer to visit the store to sell the commodity, delta C, and receive the corresponding money, delta M, at the same time. Money would still need to flow backwards, probably through a bank, to its original investor. This movement has considerably accelerated after the launch of debt and credit cards. Not so, as Lane was describing to us the other day, because he bought something and it got hung up by the bank or by bureaucrats. In the multilateral model, figure 5, the buyer makes a decision based on the image of the commodity or service on the screen. This is no different than actually the 18th century, and transfers money to the seller almost in PayPal or similar platforms. But if you acquire the commodity that has physico-chemical mass and volume, that is, it's a widget of some kind, you have to wait a few weeks or days to receive it at home or work. The realization time, that is TR, in figures 1 and 2, could be drastically reduced with money almost immediately entering the financial circuit. Although, from the final consumer's viewpoint, the product may still remain in the seller's stock for a few days and take some time to be shifted by means of transportation. This is that whole thing where Amazon, can speed up or slow down your relationship to its delivery system. In case of semiotic use turnover, that is music, books, movies, video games, etc., or many services that now drive the capitalist economy, that is tourism and hotels, for example, the substitution of physico-chemical currencies by digital form electronic currencies practically reduces to the limit of 0 the realization times of the money circuit and often that of the product circuit itself. I guess you could say that not free porn has that issue. To make all this possible, the corporations that control SDPs hire scientific technical work, that is LPP, to develop and continually analyze and improve algorithms. Most of this work is of scientific and technical nature and well remunerated. But if the platform business also involves stocking and moving goods that have physico-chemical volume and mass, their worldwide labor power may include, as in the case of Amazon, more than 300,000 low-paid workers in warehouses and transport. At the other extreme, the WhatsApp platform, which is essentially a slightly better protected text system, employs only 50 engineers. So that's now look at figure 7, information transport in an SDP, where you see you can have images and data. The data controls the algorithm. The images are what transfer. It's not a very sexy business, but in fact, that's how one level of desire is economized. Algorithms are for SDPs as machines are for factories, fixed capital. An algorithm is a kind of fixed capital. To generate and feed them, SDPs withdraw energy, inputs, and living work from circulation, but do not return commodities into circulation. That's the problem of gold farming or NFT, cyber currency, et cetera, problems. The data permanently produced through algorithms are not supplied to the market as a commodity coming out of the machines would be. Data fuel the platform, or rather its algorithms, just as energy fuels factory machines or cargo ships. Through data, sellers and buyers' intentions and situations can be connected in a time reaching the limit of 0 as they are viewed on computer or mobile phone screens. The platforms transport information while connecting sellers and buyers. As stated above, this is the useful effect that they produce. This effect will be more useful the more the turnover times, more precisely the realization times of the sellers, can be minimized. Platforms can do this by transporting from seller A to buyer B and vice versa the information produced with the data of both users. It's a duplex operation in that sense. at rates of gigabits per second in a way that can be two-way or convergent. That's figure 7. That's this here. Developed and permanently observed, improved, and analyzed by paid work, that is the LPB. In figure 6, algorithms would not carry out their information transport functions if they were not being constantly fed with seller and buyer profile data, intentions, and situations. Just as machines need to be connected to a power source, algorithms need to be connected to an information source. This is why users should keep themselves in almost constant activity. In this 21st century, for reasons that refer to commodity fetishism, research on which is beyond the scope of this article, capitalist society is forced to remain in constant electronic activity, turning it into a nearly vital cultural need, such as food or clothing, not identical. Since it has become a social need, interactive activity on SDPs, especially on audience producer platforms, is no longer free. It's compulsory. It's culturally compulsory. As Fuchs, remember I've mentioned Christian Fuchs before, states, this population acting on SDPs is under ideological coercion. That is, you're compelled to use the platforms of dominant corporations in order to keep your social relations and reputations. If they stop using these platforms, they won't die or get killed, but they will feel more isolated. In order to still fit into this society, this population is subjectively obliged to acquire a fixed or mobile access terminal to subscribe to a broadband service, and above all, to stick to the unilateral and extortionate rules of SDPs. That is extortionate because in exchange for apparently free or very cheap services, the users have to give up their privacy. Now, this is that important question. It's the question that has been raised for so many people about how much of this private information you own or how much of it has become appropriated. So this becomes a work situation. As Robert Haubrunner explains, work in its economic and sociological concepts is understood as an activity that aims to meet a compulsory need, happening under conditions that let some take hold of resources that others need in order to work. It's about means of production in that sense. Generally, in capitalist societies, this activity is remunerated in some way, but within the information capital that owns the resources of socio-digital platforms, the work of feeding the algorithms is often unpaid. Users receive nothing for the data they provide, and some of them, as in the case of the sellers, even pay, that is via subscriptions or advertising or fees or whatever, to benefit from its useful effects. While they dialogue with words, sounds, images, that is semiotic material about their desires, likes, joys, sorrows, rages, dreams, knowledge, and their income, health, education, etc., users productively consume the algorithms of the platforms and the devices they use to access them, that is fixed or mobile terminals, just like the workers in a factory productively consume their machines and their own labor power. This is not about the final consumption that annihilates the commodity. Rather, users provide unpaid labor for a certain amount of time, LPU in figure 6, and that can be equivalent to all the time they spend interacting on platforms. That is almost every day, except for now, the hours of sleep. The general formula for circulation on socio-digital platforms would be, as a rule, the same as used for transport, that is M-C P-DM, in which P is a process for production and transport of information that directly produces surplus money rather than new commodities. This is where modern money theory comes in. However, considering its peculiarities as a means of producing and transporting information as described here, the general formula, so the general formula for circulation and perhaps for capital in general is this, formula 6. And you can see the remuneration for information reflects the means of work, energy, etc. You have paid work, which is labor power here, and then unpaid labor to produce the information here. So these are not identical, even though, there are many schemes to try and monetize that, right? People will give you a fraction for clicking on stuff. You actually get a fraction back. Similar to the percentage you get back for using your credit card, which is negligible. So anyway, you have all this stuff and the reflex. So the description of the additional new circuit of capital is this business here, which is in largely exploited unpaid labor in this particular context. The shareholders of socio-digital platforms advance money M1 to procure means of production MP and remunerated scientific technical work LPP to process information algorithms extracted basically from unpaid labor, which is what I just said, which after all is the entire global society connected to the internet by fixed or mobile terminals. The information value I is related inside the platform with other market agents. Here, we will differentiate the intermediary level M2 and the level of real commodity producers M3. That's M2 is here, M3 is here. Trade, tourism, mass media, consulting firms, lawyers, advertising agencies, and other services can be considered producers and communicators of information value. On the one hand, the large connected population works for the SDPs. On the other hand, it produces goods and service mainly from the circuit M2, dashed arrows, that is P2. P2 to LP2 and continuous arrow money, LPU to P2. The hired and wage earning labor in P2 will directly produce plus money, DM2, in this specific information cycle, usually called services. So that's this here. DM2. I know you won't be able to follow. It's just, anyway. The point is, to skip below, capital M3 still operates according to the old logic exposed by Marx in the first pages of volume 2. It's the origin of the commodities that will support the whole process, DC3 to C2. And it is also the destination as part of the surplus value extracted by M2 in its own turnover and money reflux circuits, that is M2 to delta C3. We should recall, as aforementioned, that at this level, the production processes are highly automated and subsumed within the informational living work of scientific, technical research, project design, marketing, also implemented in M2. So M2 to DC3, M2 to DC3. That's this. I know this will seem very complicated to you, but it actually does make sense. And I advise you to, take a look at this and see how this operates. It's built off the basic, it's a Marxian model, and it's not problematic. That is, if you assume certain things, that we are unpaid labor when we start fiddling with our thumbs, etc., that all of this is a production process. You are part of the production process. The work of society that is unpaid by SDPs is naturally paid by M2 and M3, that is variable capital flow. Of course, the speed of turnover and the realization of variable capital will also be positively affected by the SDP circuit. On the other hand, in addition to remunerating SDPs for the service of annihilating space by time, or exponentially multiplying the quantity of annual turnovers, productive capital also provides financial support through wages, yeah, there are wages involved, or other forms of remuneration of the general work of society that feeds and valorizes the platforms at no cost. Financial capital, that as we know, grabs part of the surplus value extracted by productive capital through interest on loans, found in SDPs, another powerful way of seizing the surplus value of social labor, that is debt, here with no intermediaries, and it sends the bill to those who actually produce. We have seen in the production of gold as money, the mining firm put money back into the circulation without producing any intermediate commodity, with the labor of the miners that extracts the value and surplus value contained in the gold as money commodity from a common resource of the society, the soil or subsoil, which it appropriated as private propriety, I think it's as property, under the blessing of the capital estate laws. I don't got to show you the stinking badges. And at the end of Treasure of the Sierra Madre, in some ways, it returns to common resource. Because in Marx's words, gold or silver mining did not put valued commodity, delta C, back into circulation in exchange for plus money, delta M. This production originated the imbalance throughout the process of circulation and accumulation that nevertheless is essential to the continuing growth of the whole capitalist system. We can now see that SDPs are producing money commodity in the same way as in past gold or silver mining. They mine data in the commons of society, employing general intellect, unpaid labor. You could say that gold farming in its original context, that is the sale of various tools within the context of World of Warcraft, was doing exactly that. Data, like any other form of information, cannot be exchanged. This is not to say that there's not a tradable market of data, but this market is operated inside the algorithms under rules that only algorithms or the builders of the algorithms really know. Sellers and buyers insert their data in algorithms, endeavoring to provide the best answer they can to demands or desires of both user sides. If someone wants to buy flowers, he or she will have access to the necessary data about flower shops, types of flowers, prices, delivery time, quality, and the reliability of the service as attested to by other buyers, etc. And the seller, too, shops with the necessary data about the customers to whom they sold a bouquet of flowers, name, address, etc., and also have access to other data that inform about their own trading results through the platform, that is, clicks, visits to the site, in order to improve their competitive strategies in this seemingly perennial informational marketplace. Both user sides have access to the use value of data appropriated and monopolized by the platform, but the price paid by the seller to the platform for its service does not express any exchange value, only the quantum of money the market has agreed to pay circumstantially in these auctions. In several passages of Capital, Marx argues that goods or services may have a price without having value. It is sufficient that they can be monopolized by a party and that there is another party interested in buying them. This is the point I was making about free ports. This is typical in the case of the art market or the money market. The price in such cases results from the chance settlement between the parties. And when he explained the money market, that is Capital Volume 3, Part 5, Marx also noted that this commodity sui generis can be borrowed without its ownership actually being transferred from the seller, that is the banker, to the buyer, the industrial trader, the industry or trader. Ownership is not relinquished because there is no exchange and no equivalent is received. National gold operates like that. The borrower of the loan, as we well know, is obliged to return the money at plus interest after a certain time. The economic logic of market data is similar. Because of the informational nature of data, the ownership of its use value may not be transferred. It can only be accessed, such as in the case of money from the bank. The loan is nothing more than access by the borrower to an amount of money strictly held by the financier, but necessary for the production of real value by productive capital. The profit extracted from this operation is rent. Algorithms are protected by patents and other IPRs, intellectual property rights. But to prevent possible copying and reproduction at almost zero cost due to the increasing returns of information, algorithms and their data are also protected by a business model referred to as the walled garden. It took us a long time to get to the walled garden in business literature. This means the imposition of access to platforms solely through strictly controlled telecommunications networks owned by private corporations and terminal devices designed to take complete control over user activities like smartphones, smart TVs, e-readers, video game consoles, etc. The name walled garden is a perfect metaphor relating to the process of land enclosure of British fields in the early stage of modern capitalism, hence techno-feudalism. We are living today in a new enclosure process, the enclosure of knowledge and all cultural or social practices of human society by data-driven platform. So, as I've described before, and to bring this to an end, the economic logic of the SCP seems to be located at the financial level of the circulation of capital. And there's some conclusions. As seen before, in the capitalist process of accumulation, according to Marx, there may exist circuits in which the process of labor and production of value directly results in surplus money, delta M, that is, delta M of delta M plus M, which is M prime, not intermediated by a commodity value delta C. So this is that thing I've been talking about, that it because of the time compression, etc., it's not in the object itself. It may simply only be about numbers or data or indices, as I will refer to it. One of these circuits is that of communication or the production or transmutation of information. Capital has unleashed a plethora of businesses designed to narrow the time periods of realization of investments by stimulating consumption, and even an entire society moved by spectacle and commodity fetishism in terms of a wide and diverse literature that includes Bourdieu, Debord, Fontenelle, Schneider, and others. On this sociocultural basis, financial capital is able to work in its ideal quintessence in the market where circulation times seem to reach the limit of zero. It is a market that does not depend on the circulation time of a commodity once it's bought. It has physico-chemical mass and volume, that is, its clothes, furniture, vehicles, machines. It may take a few days to get to you. If it is semiotic material, such as music, it can be delivered in a few seconds. In either case, the financial transaction has already been concluded in a shorter time than a commercial one would be. At the same time, financial capital can look at the entire market from which it obtains exclusive and total information, whereas other agents only obtain segmented information, fragmented information, often oriented by the preferences of so-called consumers processed by the algorithms of social digital platforms. Capital is the network. That is, the network is capital. So our definition of capital, hinted at by Marx, truly, he talks about this. He talks about the season in terms of telecommunications. We realize that all the capitalist logic described in this article demonstrates the permanence of the law of value in this new stage of information capital. But just as the effects of the law of gravity are not exactly the same on the surface of Earth and the moon, so the effects of the law of value can be changed to the extent that economic or social conditions change within the historical evolution of capitalism. This does not change the foundation of the law. The accumulation of capital is a function of surplus unpaid labor. At the same time, capital operates by continuously undermining or eliminating necessary paid labor. It needs to posit this to have that, but also needs to reduce this to increase that. Therefore, if it releases work in an industry to the extent that it raises its organic composition, we're right back there again, organic composition of capital, it increases work in another as a condition, in fact, to open new frontiers of investment, accumulation, expansion. Moving in this dialectic, it cannot be surprising that capital is reaching a stage of such widespread commodification of social life that it has come to incorporate almost all of the population in the process of production of surplus value, that is unpaid surplus labor, extending the process of valorization and accumulation in addition to the direct relations of employment, where they still survive by necessary paid labor. The surplus value, we're almost at the end, the surplus value of the unpaid labor absorbed by the SDPs is sustained, as we have seen, by the variable capital of other circuits of money and production. Remember, this is how surplus value is built. Thus, contrary to what Marx would have imagined, the reduction of the general intellect of society into surplus labor in the form of compulsory informational semiotic activities on the screens of computers and smartphones, or in other words, the appropriation by capital of the disposable time of society, seems to have been the main result of the achievement by capital, pressed by law of value, in eliminating the large amount of redundant labor that during Fordism, that is during standard kind of assembly line production, it still needed to employ in factories, offices, banks, and in other economic activities. We're kind of there right now after COVID. The commodity with mass and volume may have been replaced by the image of the commodity as Debord anticipated, but unpaid labor, the source of surplus value, is increasingly being extended to almost all the time and space of human life in this highly connected network society. And Marx talks about this. The more the metamorphoses of circulation of a certain capital are only ideal, the more the time of circulation is equal to zero or approaches zero. The more does capital function, the more does its productivity and the self-expansion of its value increase. This is what Marx was talking about. This is why fictitious capital is important, et cetera, et cetera. And Marx didn't even know about the internet then. So that's the end. And yes, I've come to the end, and I'm sure hopefully there are questions, interventions. Hopefully you understood a little bit of what I was talking about. It is worth rereading because in a very simple way and in a way clearer than Christian Fuchs does, at least in my mind, the entire informational network is actually described more logically. I think Dantas does a much better than Fuchs way in which the initial equation is integrated. I can show you Fuchs's example. So anyway, you can talk now.
I've got a trivial but probably interesting point for you. On Twitch, you at some point you mentioned sleep, the one time that the internet will not harvest your value or something along those lines.
Well, actually, it's always doing that. We can't hear you.
Okay. But specifically with Twitch, if I fall asleep watching a specific channel, they always will throw when they leave, when they sign off, they will throw to another channel. And fans of that other channel will usually send out random gift subscriptions. So back when I used to be doing that all the time, I would wake up in the morning and be subscribed to 5 more channels.
Yes.
So kind of, interesting, surprising, cool, scary. I don't know.
No different than a Ponzi scheme, right?
Yeah.
You're enlisting other members, right? It's how Amway operates.
I'd say there's a little more value delivered, but okay.
Tupperware operates the same way, right? You create these little informal networks, no different than a prayer group. Indeed. They're like prayer groups, aren't they?
Yes.
That's a good example, though. Twitch is a good example because of the creation of other subscribers. They do that in Discord as well. Or it can be done in Discord, let's put it that way. That's why we have occasional, on your if you have a personal server or you're on some other servers that don't have the settings set, lots of people subscribe to you or to others. No other interventions?
There was a part there I can't quite find it in the doc now. About deepening social hierarchy, and I was curious what that meant. Did it mean, just that it's wider from the top to the bottom, or did it mean something else?
Yeah, or both. It's more vertical. I would assert vertical in that sense. It's not level. More people can. It ultimately, with respect and in relation to this article, still more about property. The IPR.
Okay, yeah. Well, so it's like the I guess the number of people is is another sort of, if there are more people in the hierarchy, it was as another way to sort of see a deeper hierarchy. But yeah, I think it means, like the vertical difference.
Well, I'm interested in your talking about that.
You're breaking up.
Idea that yes, we're all. I don't wonder why. Oh, I don't know.
Breaking up, James.
For a production expert, James, hello. That was a bit rough.
No, it's because my you probably hear me better now. No, I had my internet. I had my whatever wireless setting. Not
Good now. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying the whole walled garden idea and the what do you want to call it? Subscription model. That yes, you have to be part of whatever network and you're paying. Yes, we're all paying to. Everyone on this call is paying to be here.
Right.
Right. We're all paying. We're all getting our internet somehow. But it also has. I use Adobe. I use the Adobe Creative Suite. I use these various programs, 3D programs, drafting programs, AutoCAD, Vectorworks, and once upon a time you bought those.
Right. Right.
And now you don't. You buy a subscription to those, and you have to maintain that subscription. And if you don't, it will lock you out of the program.
Indeed.
So I don't actually own the program that's on my computer. Just like John Deere tractors, they don't own their tractors. So and
Otherwise, the dealer cuts you off from your supply of drugs, right? It's
Right.
pretty much the same deal.
So it's a walled garden, but you can't go pick the flower. Even if you can get in, you can only rent the flowers. You can't actually pick them and take them home.
That's right.
You can look at them, but you don't. I don't, own those things, and it is, we go back and forth in our field about the value. Is there? I mean, yes, it's good. It updates every year. There are new features. Blah blah blah. It gets better, but like I'm paying a subscription for a very expensive 3D program, Cinema 4D. I'm still using the version of it from 3 years ago.
There we go.
Because I just don't even want to fucking update the whole program and learn all the new features and all that. I know I have to eventually, but
that's the limit. But at one level, it's exploiting you in the sense that,
exactly.
You're not,
I mean, I have it. I have the newest version. I download it, but I don't use it. It's silly, but so yes.
They've skimmed already a surplus off of you.
Absolutely. 100%. And there are ways of getting around it. You could download illegal copies and all that shit, but
oh yes.
I don't want to take the risk with viruses and
you become
blah,
part
blah,
of
blah.
the machine, James.
I'm part of that machine. But I mean, we go into this incredible depth of analysis of capitalism, and it's like, and then, all right, we're going to overthrow this, but how? I mean, what's the, it seems sort of like fantasy. Yes, we're going to create a socialist version of the internet. I don't know.
Well,
it seems like we're more interested in just analyzing it and critiquing it than actually thinking. I mean, not we, meaning.
Well, you do mean we. I'm going to suggest this. Two things. One,
I can live off the grid, I guess.
One, analyzing is just fun for me anyway.
Yeah, it's fun. No, it is.
But then two, it's as if there were never when I hear this idea that how is it ever going to be different? It's as if history, like power structures, economic structures, never changed before,
right.
Probably in our lifetime, I don't expect to see it, right? But it's like things do change.
Yes, maybe in 100. Yes, in Star Trek timescales, there will be a future where everything is free and we're in a post-monetary society.
Will be before that, everybody.
James
AI is
is
going to kill us,
correct.
man.
James is
AI is
correct.
going to kill us.
And I look at it this way, James. I feel if civilization survives or if humanity survives in some way, I feel like in the future, this time will be seen as people will look back and say, "What the fuck? They had all the answers. They had all the technology. They had all the scientists, and yet they could not fucking do it."
People won't ever look back. They will always look forward in the digital age.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. Yes, and frankly, I don't I'm not that interested in 3 generations from now. I kind of want to make things better for us. And it seems like the best we can hope for, and we don't even have that, is, regulating regulating capitalism in some ways. And essentially we're going in the exact opposite direction. I mean, we just had,
Right.
for those of you who know, we just had an
Well,
election here in Westchester County, and a certain,
financial decisions are based on
Jamal Bowman,
algorithms.
who I voted for yesterday, went down in flaming defeat because $14 million was spent against him. And there used to be a thing called, campaign finance regulations. That's all gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
Got to take down the internet.
You can buy, your politician free and fair, and I don't see, I don't see that going back. I don't see, massive corporations like Google being broken up like they used to back in the old. Remember?
But so you just were talking about radical change versus things in the current system, and you just gave 2 examples of things that would not require undoing capitalism. Like
Right.
So if even that isn't possible,
Yep.
why are you even thinking about any of this?
Well, think about it because I want it to be better.
Yeah. Okay. I just,
I mean,
provoking. I know
no,
Joe
I know,
also.
but I mean, this is the whole thing I brought up the last time back in the old days when David Feldman was still part of this whole, and I brought up, none of this is going to happen without campaign finance reform. And his response was, why are you thinking about, campaign finance reform? Nobody cares about that. We've got to tear the whole system down. It's like, okay, all right, well, we'll just fantasize. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can go fantasize.
But it's not necessary to choose. You can work on both fronts.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying that it seems captivating to utopianize. Is that a word? I don't know. Maybe it is.
Well, an interesting fact. The Reform Party in Britain, not technically a party. It's a limited company. So it's an actual corporation.
Mm-hmm.
That's new.
Oh, so it's a corporation
apparently the people who have installed Starmer, that's a group called Labour Together, which was set up by, guess who? Peter Mandelson and Tony Blair to perpetuate New Labour into what's their version of sort of PNAC?
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep it going. And that's a limited company.
Well,
So
there you go.
the artifice of what a party is now has changed in Britain. It's like it's not nothing to do with democracy. It's not even and
we're getting closer and closer to rollerball every year, it seems.
Reform they've got 500,000 members currently, and it's 25 quid prescription. That's a lot. I think they're lying about the numbers. They can't possibly. I hope they haven't, because Jeremy Corbyn didn't get anywhere near that, and his subscriptions were 3 quid.
How much is that in dollars?
A lot of money.
I can't.
Things is changing, but not in the way
it's going the wrong way.
we expected it to change. That's the thing, and I think that's the point about techno-feudalism as well.
Yep.
It's blindsided us because we rely on the same thing. We rely on the technology. We're doing it now to communicate with each other.
That's what I was just saying earlier. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to have an antitrust. There was U.S. What was it? Standard Oil, right? That was broken up. AT&T. Once upon a time, they did
James,
break up
well,
corporations that
James-
got too big.
So, Joe in
I'm just-
Norway, is there not a way you could set up a video chat for all of us that was not on Zoom? Was it?
I was just gonna ask James. I thought your name was James, not Debbie Downer.
Oh, sorry.
Let me try to let me try to be a little positive and
Okay.
dare
Yes,
I say
please.
hopeful.
No.
All things are
Hope
bad
so.
when Joe's got to be positive.
Yeah, right. Joe in Norway.
Me,
I have to sit down.
Joe's the positive one. You know
everyone
you're
strap in. Strap in, it's going to be all right.
all right. Let's hear it. Let's hear the blow some sunshine, baby. Where are you? What happened?
That was like he just tricked us. That was a total Rickroll.
Oh man.
The perfect setup.
Fell
That
for
was
it.
an example of Joe's hope.
Joe's hope. Tonight on Joe's Hope.
Joe doesn't do hope. He does not do hope.
Hopium. There's no hopium left.
Mhm.
The hopium den is empty.
Either that or his internet fell off. Is he there? Joseph. We'll have to
Did we
contact
lose
him
him?
via a medium.
Bloody hell. Yeah, Joe bailed.
Ah. He must have fell off.
Darn, I was just hoping for reasons to believe.
Come back, Joe.
You know.
Oh,
Oh, I guess I was silent, but several people have just disappeared. What the hell?
Driven them away.
Did we not pay our bill?
something like that happened last week with Nancy and a few others. It just fell off.
Huh.
Hmm.
Well, what
back.
I said with my camera, my mic muted was, I'm hoping it after Joe's done with whatever, like between him and this other guy I know there is like a way we could like do what we're doing here without using Zoom, that there's so much we could do on our own.
Well, what do you mean by what would you use?
Yeah.
Well, I think so, but you would just set up your own server. Just everything it
technology.
is.
You'd need the technology.
You still need a platform. That's the point.
No, but you'd need the internet. You always have to have the internet, of course. But the internet itself is still somewhat neutral. And I'm not talking about the World Wide Web, right? Separate that from the internet. But anyway, I think people are coming back. So another day, another time.
Okay, I'm back.
Come back with your wisdom, Nate.
What's your hope, dude?
Furnish us with your news of hope. Nate.
No, Joe's back. He had something to say. I see a toilet. I see a toilet.
Is he flushing hope away?
Well, I think we're about at the moment where we probably should cut the feed. Let me thank everyone
We're still
for
recording all that. Jesus.
your attention. What did Joe just?
We're gonna get out, man.
Did Joe just bail again? Yeah, he did. Oh no, he
came and went. He came and went. He's got issues, clearly.
Maybe his connection wherever he is sketchy.
My ISP should have been happy with what I was about to say.
Lots of Joe's.
All right, speak quickly before you get bumped.
We're almost on our way out of this flat, and maybe my ISP decided to cut the internet a couple days early. Yeah. So pre-blogging platform like Movable Type. This was pre-WordPress. There was just static websites that people published. This was just shortly after they commercialized the internet. All of that still exists. That possibility still exists. It's just a technological hurdle, and for some people, it's a monetary hurdle to be able to host your own shit, basically. But all of that still exists. And now with the emergence of these walled gardens or blogging, writing platforms, social networks like Twitter, which are just, micro versions of weblogs, websites. The walled garden is a good concept for people who like to keep things private, local, and maintain their own identity and to be independent and go under the radar in certain cases if you're in certain vulnerable communities and so on and so forth. So in one way, walled gardens aren't a terrible idea. They can be once they're dominated by massive corporate power structures. But in and of themselves, they're not terrible, and they still exist, and they're still flourishing. It's called the indie web now, and there are possibilities to. We're part of the TAC. The TAC website is part of that, and it still exists. But there's also another movement, or not a movement. It's always been independent software development, as James was saying earlier, where you could buy just a one-off deal. It used to be floppy disks, then it was CDs, then it was now we download and we stream. But they were initially singular purchases,
right?
And then once I think the emergence of the subscription model emerged.
Lost him
Wait,
again.
what? Shit. Where'd you go, Joe?
He's back off. No, he hasn't started.
I think it's the CIA cutting him off.
There's the feds, man. You mentioned
He's on a good roll.
Yes, I still remember inserting 12 floppy disks into my my Mac. What was it called? A PowerBook 100 that had all of 42 megs of RAM. Or no, 42 megabyte hard drive or something.
Right.
In order to run Photoshop. It was like it took half an hour or an hour just to insert all the. Please now insert disk 2 of 16. It's like, oh my God.
Well, an interesting history of Microsoft Flight Sim is after Flight Sim 10 FSX, Flight Sim, Microsoft went, we're going to stop this now. We're not going to do it anymore. But however, it is still available on this thing called Prepare 3D, which was owned by Lockheed Martin. A lesser version went onto Steam, but the proper one, if you wanted all the bells and whistles, you could go to Prepare 3D and do things really professionally. And of course, it's all on Lockheed Martin's cloud. So have a guess what's been teaching the AI that's fighting with any. They're just getting there with the F-16, that new one. The
Yes.
Vista
Joe's
F-16.
back though. I want to hear the rest of his little thing.
He's back.
Joe.
Oh.
Joe.
We take you now to
get off that toilet.
No,
geez.
Go on again.
My point being, it's It's not just us who used all of this. Like everything is on the cloud. The
Yeah.
financial systems are on the cloud. Government, everything is on the cloud. And
What did you say?
it all
Oh,
uses AI. So whoever owns the AA and who owns the cloud, they also own finance, they also own
Mhm.
government, they own everything. So yeah.
well, this is all true, but just in case I get kicked off,
You're
I want
next.
to say, as far as the non-cloud, I have 6 floppy disks left over from 20 years ago.
Jesus.
If any of you have a machine that can take those, I will mail them to you. If you insert them in to your computer, whatever, and run them, you will be a legitimate communist.
Ooh. Okay.
It's as easy as that.
I mean, I will. All right, I'll speak to the opposite. I'll take the contrary view of all of it, which is that the cloud, all of once upon a time, I had to go into an office, and all of our computers, all of our information was on a big thing that sat next to my desk, and I had an assistant who sat next to me, and we had to stand at the same monitor and look at each other and go. And I go, all right, make it look like this, and move this thing around. Thanks to the cloud and technology, I no longer have any of that. Everything is stored, yes, on Dropbox. I have terabytes of information on Dropbox, all my projects. And I don't have to go into an office. I don't have to pay for an office. And I communicate with my assistant through Zoom, and we're never in the same room. And I don't run to FedEx. I don't run to Federal Express at 7:30 at night after having run blueprints through the old blueprint machine, put them in a tube and get them to trying to get to FedEx before it closes to get the stuff off to whichever theater I was designing for. Now I just make a PDF and hit send.
It's very convenient. That's the whole point.
So
yeah.
it is extremely convenient. I know that. I also know that if I don't pay my annual Dropbox subscription, all that shit goes away.
Yeah, and things become very lot less convenient.
Yes. So I know I have to pay for those things on a subscription basis, but it has definitely made, I would say it has made my cost of production lower. Absolutely. Significantly lower.
It made the process you carry out to fulfill your role more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Way more efficient. I used to actually build physical models, gigantic models that look, that 3 feet wide by 2 feet deep when I used to, do Broadway shows, and they would cost tens of thousands of dollars to build because the labor involved and just the materials and having stuff laser printed and cut and all that shit. Now I can just build it all virtually and send them a 4D.
Do you have more free? Oh, I said, do you have more free time as a result?
Well, technically, yeah, I do. There is some more free time. Yeah, I mean, I don't commute and I don't have to. There are places, yes, there are areas I am freed up. Now, what do I really do with that time? I multitask.
Equivocal tone there, James.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. But briefly. Can I interrupt here for a minute? All right. I'm on 5G and I keep getting knocked off. So no internet, no 5G or patchy. So maybe Russia's fucking with our systems here. I don't know.
They're just after you, I think.
So the concept of the singular purchase for software still exists. It's much smaller projects. For one, the company who Twitter originally was built off of is called Ruby on Rails. It's a framework for building web applications, basically. This company built their own tool that utilized this thing. Anyways, they're kind of a big tech company that bucks the trend of the ruthless venture fund types of businesses, and they focus on more down to earth approach. And now they've started going back. They launched something called Once, where it's basically just they're starting to produce one-off software projects where you pay once and that's it. They're hoping it'll trigger a kind of renaissance of like we had back in the old days. I don't think the big ones are going to go back to that model, but you never know. It could come in cycles. People are, I assume, you're getting subscription exhaustion, not just mentally trying to manage.
Oh, gone again. Oops, sorry. Poor Joe.
Well, I would assert that's probably throttling that goes on with 5G. 5G is really, this is the problem of net neutrality, right? That large corporations are using huge bulks of things, whether it's games or whatever, you're all competing with the same shit at the same time. And you sort of don't see these things happening, but
well, right.
Darn tubes.
Also, though, as far as the convenience in your job you were talking about, James, I mean, that's what all of us are dealing with as consumers, right? It's so convenient.
Yeah, true.
But we are making a trade-off.
We are definitely making a trade-off. Absolutely. I mean, the advantage for me, at least, with some of these programs like Vectorworks, which is a drafting program, is it also, when you have the subscription, you have access to a huge, and the same thing with you have access to a huge a library of what are called blocks, meaning pre-modeled AutoCAD or vector files. So you can pull down pretty much anything you need in terms of, if I need a specific lighting fixture, a specific type of truss or a specific anything, I can get access to massive amounts of data through the subscription that I wouldn't have access to if I wasn't subscribing.
Right.
So same thing with Cinema 4D. There's a huge thing called Cineversity that millions of tutorials, and like I can learn how to pretty much do anything. Has its advantages, like.
Do you have any thought that? But how close are you to retirement? Put it that way, more politely.
Well, if I'm retiring between 85 and 90, I'm not very close.
What? Come on.
I don't intend to stop working until I'm in my mid 80s. I imagine I'll cut down, but
right. But that's quite a while, I'm guessing. Just okay.
No, but I'm not near retirement.
Do you have any thought that some of the skills you have will be, I'm not going to say replaced, but that some of the efficiency and convenience you're talking about, that once your industry and your particular skill set starts using
AI,
exactly right, will that make you so efficient that you will be needed so much less?
I don't know if what I do, I mean, maybe someday, but what I do is so specific, meaning I have to design a set that has to fit into a very particular 3D space. like the amount of information you have to input, and maybe this will get to this where, all this data will be on the web where I can click on a particular venue in Las Vegas, and then I can, basically say, someday, I need a set that's X feet wide by X feet tall by, LED screens that are this and scenery that kind of looks like this. I mean, maybe, but even then, all I could do is produce an image of that. And my job is not to produce images. Ultimately, it's to produce an actual built, fabricated thing that human beings actually interact with in 3D real time in a specific space.
Right.
Whether that's a theater or whether that's a TV studio for a set, I don't, and the parameters are so complicated. You have to deal with fire exits. You have to deal with, rigging points that exist in an existing room, or in a theater. You have to deal with fire regulations and how many line sets that I don't think it can be replaced with AI yet.
So hopefully
someday.
But when you say Las Vegas, I can't help but say, are you saying you work at the Sphere?
Well, no, I don't work at the Sphere.
I mean, did you design anything for
no,
a
I
show
had nothing to do
at
with
the
that.
Sphere?
No,
Okay,
I wish.
okay.
I would love to someday. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've designed in a lot of the different ballrooms and a lot of the different venues. I've designed like Twyla Tharp dance piece that I did. We brought to the Wynn Hotel, their theater, and stuff like that. No, I haven't even seen the Sphere yet. I haven't been there.
Right. I do know that name, Twyla Tharp. I think I've watched some videos of her dance. It's cool.
Yeah, she's great. She's I did a piece with her years ago, 2010. I don't know, a musical. It was a Broadway dance musical called "Come Fly Away," based on all the music of Frank Sinatra. And then we brought it to Las Vegas and ran for a little while there.
Looks like there's a message that Joe sent to Larry that Larry sent to us that if anyone can help, looks like that type of message in chat.
If anyone can help.
Okay, I can do that, Joe.
I'm passing along from Discord.
I have to step out for a second. I got to take a call from my son, but I will be back.
Okay, I'm now back to being host. I can shut off the live stream of this. Okay, so thank you for participating. We're going to stop the live stream and get back to other